Hello friends, I am Alka Vadkar from Pune. We are going to discuss something which is the most serious application of psychology to save human life. We are talking about suicide and suicide prevention. On 1st of February 2019, a student from IIT Hyderabad killed himself by jumping off his hostel building. In January 2019, a medical student killed herself due to examination stress. According to one estimate, more than 46,000 suicides take place every year in the age group of 15 to 29. Suicide is the most serious problem of mental health. When an individual cannot tolerate the stress that is generated by different problems, he commits suicide. Suicide rate is increasing substantially all over the world every year. It is reported that one person commits suicide every 40 seconds and the male female ratio is 2:1. World Health Organization has predicted that in 2020 approximately 1.53 million people will die due to suicide. According to World Health Organization, India is one of the leading countries where suicide rate is highest. 17% of the world's total suicides are committed in India. Suicide is an act of intentional cessation. It results from perception of problems as impossible to solve and unbearable to cope with, leading to anguish and worthlessness. It is multidimensional and multidisciplinary problem. The individual kills himself as a cumulative effect and complex and complicated interaction of genetic, biological, psychological, familial, economic, social, environmental, cultural, professional or academic problems. It may also include factors like mental health disorders, terminal diseases, addictions or natural calamities. The individual wants to get rid of the situation as there is no solution according to him. Sui is self and side is murder. Suicide is defined as death caused by self-directed injuries or injurious behavior with the intent to die. All the definitions focus on intent to end one's life and self-directed harm. It is deliberate self-harm. Some definitions include related phenomenon like ambivalence. Shinman has focused on ambivalence, which means there is a wish to die and wish to live, which are present simultaneously. On one hand, the person consumes poison and or sets fire to oneself, and on the other hand he wants somebody to help him out and save his life. Contagious suicides are more prevalent in adolescents and young adults. Suicide attempts are 20 times more than actual deaths due to suicides. Lifetime suicide ideation is reported to be approximately 14% in general population, which is quite high. Attempted suicide is also called as parasuicide or pseudocide. It is non-fatal, non-inflicted, potentially harmful behavior with an intention to die. Attempted suicide is unsuccessful suicidal act where the individual is saved. It is observed that approximately 10% of these individuals they commit suicide maybe in the next few years. Suicidal act is performing the act with intention to die, but may or may not result in death. Suicidal ideation is thinking, perceptions, beliefs and other cognitive processes regarding intentionally ending one's life. Suicidal gesture is overtly an attempted suicide, but the individual never wants to die. He may die due to some accidental, death. Attempted suicide is more common in women. An adolescent who wants to purchase a costly mobile immediately and may threaten his parents that if they do not give it, he will commit suicide. Just to threaten them, he may prepare a scene as if he is really going to hang himself accidentally really is killed. See, per day 200 people commit suicide in India, which is quite horrible. More Indian women committing suicide, they consume poison, men generally use firearms. It is reported by researchers that less married men commit suicide than married women. Higher rate among medical professionals is seen due to intense stress and more accessibility to drugs. Consuming pesticides is very common in rural areas, especially in case of farmers. Suicide is committed to get rid of unbearable pain and anguish. Intense feeling of hopelessness resulting from pain and anguish leads to suicidal ideation. To start with, individual just thinks about it, gradually tries to increase his tolerance to physical unbearable pain, and finally tries to actually kill himself. Researchers have reported that suicide ideation is more among females than among males. Even suicide attempts are more in females than in males in Western countries. However, impact of culture cannot be underestimated. Four types of individuals who commit suicides are death initiators, those who are terminally or chronically ill, like for example AIDS patients who want to get rid of all the sufferings and to speed up the process of death to avoid loss of quality of life and unwanted dependence on others. The second type is death seekers, individuals who want to seriously die, their attempt is fatal. The third is death ignorers, some individuals believe that there is better life after death, hence they want to die. The fourth one is death darers, some individuals are interested in betting one's life or taking risk in which there are chances of death. Now, this results in death. Suicides are divided into different types: individual suicide and collective or group suicide. Collective suicide is like pairs having intense love which is not appreciated by their society. Planned or impulsive suicide, here emotional and cognitive ups and downs or general instability and impulsivity of the individual determines time taken to execute suicide. Active and passive suicide, here actually actively initiating something which results in one's death and facing death without doing anything to save oneself are these two types. Attention getting and serious suicide, craving for attention and affection may lead to suicide. Sincere suicide is when the individual wants to commit suicide in spite of attention given by others. Some other types are chronic suicide by an individual who is very strict, avoids all pleasures, maybe because of physical or psychological illness. Organic suicide results from organic diseases with psychological problems. Focal suicide is related to multiple accidents, impotence, self mutilation, malingering and so on and so forth. Durkheim has given three types of suicides with reference to its intention, like altruistic, egoistic and anomic. In case of the last one, life is unstable, meaningless, disoriented, there is no sense of belongingness. Generally, suicide is linked with emotional instability and weaknesses. Almost 90% of the individuals suffer from some clinical disorders in Western countries. However, in India it is much less, that is 30% approximately. There are individuals who commit suicide with full awareness and understanding. In Indian culture, sati, johar, samadhi or burying oneself alive or prayopaveshan or fasting till death are known for generations. Currently, setting fire to self is in public place for attracting the attention of authorities to injustice and even suicides to express loyalty to the dead leader are seen. There are numerous psychological theories about suicide. According to Freud, suicide is an expression of internalized hostility. Oedipus complex results in hate for the same sex parent and wish that he should be dead. Due to repression of this, hostility results in guilt and desire to punish self. Such intense feeling of self directed hostility leads to suicide. Death instinct or thanatos is also given as a cause of suicide. Extreme emotional experiences due to failure or insult are indirectly related to narcissistic harm. Loss of loved object or individuals, identification of the individual with someone who has already committed suicide are also responsible for suicide. Penchel has explained suicidal act as an impact of excess superego. Jung gave the view that transference is responsible for suicide. Over-dependency on the therapist while discussing the innermost emotions makes the individual weak. According to Jung, sometimes death becomes better choice than life. When it is for ideal or value, death is perceived as liberation. Sometimes the person expects that death may lead to reunion with loved ones who are dead, and death is the ultimate answer to it. Adler suggested that suicide is for hurting others, indirectly by hurting oneself. The person wants to teach them a lesson. Such persons do not have enough confidence. Childhood mistakes, lack of conducive environment in childhood may lead to neurotic tendencies or even suicide. Horney's theory explains suicide as expression of uncontrolled neurotic urge to destroy the others. The isolated person tries to destroy those who have hurt him, and he cannot forget and forgive. As it is impossible, he becomes detached, perceives death as complete isolation and detachment. Helpless individual who is craving for love and sympathy, if can't win anybody's love and affection, thinks death as the only way to get it. Sullivan has given the theory of suicide with reference to intrapersonal and interpersonal relationship, disintegration of personality and extreme anxiety. Shenman focused on disturbed interpersonal relations leading to extreme negative emotions like rage, hostility and revenge orientation. Frustration due to rejection in interpersonal relationship leads to dependency on that relationship and wish to withdraw from it. Second is life is perceived as futile and void. Shenman has linked suicide with thinking process and given three types of suicides as logical, catalogical and paleological. Logical is related to extreme physical pain. There are no fallacies in that. Catalogical suicides are linked with distorted thinking, dichotomous ideas and semantic errors, and paleological suicides are associated with delusional type of thinking. In addition, inner conflict may lead to anxiety and confusion. According to Bretzel, adolescents may fail to fulfill parental expectations and feel guilty and experience shame, rejection and being unwanted. Then suicide ideation emerges, ultimately they commit suicide. Depression, loneliness, general apathy, loss of sleep, less appetite, loss of interest in daily activities are associated with suicide. West explains suicide with the help of frustration aggression model. Hostility is directed inwards. Sheldon has put forth the idea that when endomorphic individual perceives that interpersonal relations are disturbed, he tries to kill himself. Sheldon has put forth the idea that when endomorphic individual perceives that interpersonal relations are disturbed, he tries to kill himself. Mesomorphic commits suicide due to loss of strength, which leads to loss of control over others. As ectomorphs do not share things with others, they struggle hard alone and are more prone to suicide. Indian researchers Geet and Agassi have given the theory based on idea of revenge. The person wants to teach a lesson to significant others. Extreme emotional distress is responsible for suicide. Some other theories focused on hopelessness, helplessness, personal inadequacies, environmental problems, lack of emotional support and cultural expectations. According to Bake, risk of suicide is 11 times more when one experiences hopelessness. Escape theory says that person concentrates on personal inadequacies, it results in sadness. It results in sadness, worry and distress. Escape theory says that person concentrates on personal inadequacies, which results in sadness, worry and distress. Reduced impulse control and reduction in inhibition may facilitate suicide related thoughts. In 2011, an integrated motivational and volitional model was given by O'Connor. Fluid vulnerability model was given by Rood in 2000. Joyner has given the importance of interpersonal relationship with reference to thwarted belongingness, perceived burdensomeness and acquired capacity for suicide. The concept of burdensomeness means perception that the person can't contribute anything to the world and others' lives will be better if he disappears. The third is acquired capacity for suicide, okay. The third is acquired capacity for suicide and capacity to bear physical pain. Physiological diseases and suicide are also linked by some theorists. Those who try to commit suicide but are not successful are generally neurotic or psychopath. According to researchers, 75% of the depressed individuals have ideas about suicides, 10 to 15% attempt it. In 2015, researchers have given causes of suicide which are common in India. Family related problems are most common, that is 27%. In that, marriage related issues including non-settlement of marriage are also having substantial contribution. Dowry related issues, 21 dowry deaths were reported every day in India in 2017. Love affairs and related issues like illegitimate pregnancy contribute approximately 25% of suicides in India. Extramarital affairs, divorce, impotency, infertility are also included in that. Other causes are illness, either mental or prolonged or terminal physical illness like AIDS, paralysis, cancer, Parkinson's etc., physical and emotional abuse, conflict, trauma or natural disaster, disputes, migration, status as refugees, childhood abuse, identity and personality problems are also included. Loss of death of dear ones, drug abuse, addiction, prolonged unemployment. See, in case of Indian adolescents and youth, academic failure is extremely difficult to face because of undue expectations and unrealistic expectations of the parents and strict authoritarian parenting style. Recently, problems emerging from cyberbullying, blackmailing by preparing indecent videos etc., misusing the information from social media or social networking are contributing to suicide. Bankruptcy and inability to repay loans, especially is applicable in case of farmers. Farmers' suicide is a serious issue and is a challenge to mental health professionals in India. Many states like Maharashtra, Karnataka, Chhattisgarh, Orissa have substantially high incidence. For example, 23,000 farmers killed themselves in Maharashtra since 2009 in just 7 years. Among all suicides, farmers' suicides account for 11% in India. Many of them are young. Poison use is very common, that is 40% of the cases, hanging 30%, drowning 9% and jumping in front of train or any vehicle is 3%. Three negative emotions, namely hopelessness, helplessness and worthlessness, are related to clinical depression and suicide. Predicting suicide, attempts to suicide and suicidal ideation becomes very important. We, the teachers of psychology, should be able to identify signs of suicide ideation and predict if there is any possibility of suicide among our students. So, let us consider warning signs regarding suicide ideation and plan of suicide. The individual is lost, confused, preoccupied in some deep thought, less receptive of environmental stimuli. The individual declares his plans to commit suicide to others, either from family or friends. Writing stories, poems and drawing pictures regarding one's death may also be seen. Sudden and radical behavioral change. change in interest, attitude and interpersonal relationship are obvious. The individual is not interested in personal appearance or maybe routine work, studies, winning anyone's appreciation. He is less involved in friends or any social gathering. The individual gives away his valued personal belongings without any emotional attachment. Like for example, costly articles, ornaments, artwork, books or even pets. The person winds up his personal continuing activities and future programs, like for example, closing bank accounts or cancelling admission for next semester, etc. Overconsumption of cigarettes, alcohol and drugs is also seen. Too much or too little sleep, not taking proper food, or basically the individual is not just bothered about his health. Lack of interest in activities which were previously very interesting, like hobbies, is marked. Repeated wounds like cuts on wrists, burns, etc. are observed. The individual may show reckless behavior because he is not worried about any loss or damage, like driving a bike too fast. Lower academic achievement, failure or any loss is taken casually without emotional reaction. Lack of ability to concentrate on studies or work and hence being apathetic about it is observed. Feeling of worthlessness, hopelessness and helplessness becomes obvious from any interaction. If there are prior attempts to suicide, collecting material required for suicide, special attention should be paid. Specific verbal indicators should be interpreted carefully. They are neglecting messages from parents, other family members, teachers or classmates or friends. Expression indicating that the family will be more happy and having better life without the individual. Mentioning again and again that everything is going to get spoiled. There is deterioration and the individual cannot tolerate it at all. Negative expressions indicating hopelessness, helplessness and worthlessness are vividly seen in every activity. I want to quit, enough is enough, that type of expression is seen. So, if such things are taking place after some trauma or traumatic experience or mishap, special attention should be paid. Intervention, counseling and therapy. Of course, we as psychologists are interested in all these issues. Prevention is better than cure. So, it is a must to recognize and interpret the hidden and direct messages of the individual. Now, these messages indicate his orientation towards suicide. It is necessary to understand verbal, non-verbal and similar other communication patterns as well as behavioral warnings. I think I should repeat. It is necessary to understand verbal and non-verbal communication patterns and behavioral warnings. If someone expresses that he wants to commit suicide, he is actually craving for attention and is trying to get some help. Hence, these signals should be carefully analyzed. Emotional support from the family members and close friends is the most essential need for preventing suicide. It is essential to take care of the individual for 24 hours. In case family and close friends are not available or if they are not ready to help, it is extremely trying to save the individual. Let us consider two types of preventions, primary and secondary. Primary is related to family and society. Societal disorganization, disintegration and weakened family system as well as ineffective religious bonds are responsible for problems of individual's personality. The whole process and effects of socialization, mental health, values and general lifestyle are influenced by it. There is a link between antisocial aggressive behavior and self-destructive tendencies. High risk individuals should be given appropriate help from the beginning. If emotional state and behavior of these individuals are similar to those who have already committed suicide, then it is a must to do every serious attempt to change their mentality. These individuals may include unwed adolescent mothers, depressed patients, drug addicts and alcoholics. Secondary prevention is basically oriented towards prevention of repeated occurrence of harmful activities and reducing the possibility that the individual will suffer due to associated disability. In suicide prevention, the person should be saved from himself, and that is exactly why it is especially difficult and tactful. Primarily, we should remember that emotional catharsis helps a lot for releasing the negative emotions. Hence, it is a must to encourage the individual to talk freely and openly about his problems and why he thinks it is impossible to solve them. Psychological distance between the individual and the significant others must be reduced to such an extent that emotional catharsis becomes easy for the individual. Family members and friends should listen carefully and actively and interpret all the verbal and non-verbal messages seriously. They should try to correlate various stresses in individual's life and find if there is any consistent pattern of negative feeling and attitudes. Empathy is the most significant strategy to understand the exact feelings and experiences of the individual. It helps the family and the friends to fully understand the reason why the individual feels so helpless and hopeless. One should never take things casually, never criticize and evaluate the views expressed by the individual or make fun of him. One should not raise any issue and should avoid any discussion which may increase the guilt in the mind of the individual. One should never criticize his behavior or ideas or blame the individual. Family and friends should not argue even if they feel that individual's ideas are illogical and there are many other ways to interpret various events. Supportive family and friends should not leave the individual alone, and he should be supervised carefully. If he is left alone, he may get involved in recurring thoughts of suicide and may try to practice some risky behavioral patterns. It is necessary to encourage him to get proper help and contact experts in the field. It is not his defect, but is a normal reaction to mental health issues. Depending on severity of the problem, we have to provide immediate help. If the risk is too much, then one should remove all harmful sharp objects and medicines which may be used for attempt to suicide. Sometimes the individual overtly is improved, but still it is necessary to keep on helping him. Sometimes the individual overtly is improved, but still it is necessary to keep on helping even if we think it is not needed, because it indicates concern. This may lead to sense of security. Family members and friends should never negotiate even partially and accept that suicide is justified or is the only solution to the given situation. It is worth remembering that family members of the individual should not become defensive, punitive, outright reject that he needs some professional help. See, other protective factors are also essential. Family support includes all spheres of life. Every possible type of support should be given to the affected individual by the family members and friends. It may include economic, social, emotional, educational support and the like. Societal support is help from various non-government organizations, multiple suicide prevention centers and other social groups. The individual should be provided meaningful work, different opportunities and conducive psychosocial environment may be provided. Different types of training should be made available to the individual, which may contribute to arresting suicidal thoughts. This may include relaxation techniques, yoga, positive thinking, proactive thinking, assertiveness, hardiness, resilience and the like. If need be, techniques like systematic desensitization may also be used. General supportive environment and facilities are the basic requirements. Reducing stress by changing the environment and its perception becomes essential. The person should be helped to realize that it is his perception that is resulting in such problems. The way in which he is thinking is not logical, it is not objective, and it is because of that he fails to understand different alternatives to solve the problem. He should be able to realize that distress is temporary and he is not the only one who is suffering like that, but many individuals are suffering even more seriously. Encouraging the individual for strengthening one's self and self understanding, self concept, as well as supporting the individual for ego enhancement are essential. Family and friends must be aware of the condition and try their level best to protect the individual. If the individual has substantial distress and it becomes unbearable, counseling helps. Lethal means should be removed. When the individual actually tries to kill himself by doing some actual action, it is necessary to give medical help and save his life. Many experts have recommended that directive counseling is better to help them. All the significant others should try to enhance relationship with the individual. Treatment may differ with reference to the intensity of the problem. Some individuals may be having suicidal potential, suicidal ideation, others may have actually attempted it. Appropriate rapport establishment becomes essential because without it the individual may not feel free to share his innermost thoughts and feelings. Respecting the individual, helping him to maintain his dignity and confidentiality are the basic issues. Supportive therapy to express acceptance and reducing the feeling of being isolated is the fundamental need of the individual. Family and marital therapy also strengthen interpersonal relationship and enhance emotional support. For stress management, positive changes in the surrounding, routine and his lifestyle may help. It is important to develop insight in the individual's perception about his problems. Group therapy is also useful as group interaction facilitates many positive things. Meaningful social interaction helps the individual to recover. Unconditional acceptance and accepting the individual as a worthy person, unconditional positive regard, understanding his thoughts and feelings without evaluation are the basic requirements. Some rare cases are such that the person survives after the sincere attempt to kill himself. These individuals feel extreme shame, guilt, hatred and other negative emotions like perplexity and all sorts of confusion, cognitive as well as emotional. Here postvention is essential to save the individual from negative thoughts and recurrence of the suicidal attempt. Cognitive behavior therapy and rational emotive therapy are recommended by experts to help vulnerable individuals. All other possible therapies also should be used depending upon the age, gender, education, values and socialization of the individual. Providing new opportunities to make life meaningful may include something like giving some work or maybe to suggest rearing a pet, whichever works well. Workplace suicide prevention program and similar programs in educational institutes may help the most vulnerable population. It is essential to develop these programs with reference to Indian culture, socialization practices, values and emotional needs. Including suicide ideation also in prevention program may make it more effective. In this way, I think we, the teachers of psychology, will be able to contribute something which is very important for saving human lives. Thank you.